Mwetinian Salami, ably represented by the Acting Vice Chancellor and Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Catherine Upon, other principal officers of our great university, the provost, deans, directors, professors emeriti, other esteemed professors and scholars here present, Your Excellencies, top government functionaries, Your Royal Highnesses, the lecturer, family of the lecturer, greatest Uniben staff and students, invited guests, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's a great day today as we welcome you to the 280th in the inaugural lecture series of the University of Benin. The lecture is to be delivered by a quintessential legal luminary, an erudite law teacher and senior advocate of Nigeria, Professor Edoba Bright Omoregie, S.A.M. Professor Omoregie is a professor of comparative constitutional law and governance. The topic of lecture is Nigeria's federal system in a quandary, the whys and hows to fix it. May I now invite the Registrar of the University, Mr. Ademola Bobola, to introduce the Vice Chancellor and the Vice Chancellors of the session. Mr. Registrar.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, kindly permit me to abide by the already established protocol. Hence, all courtesies duly extended. It is my singular honor to present to this assembly the number one citizen on campus, the transformational leader of this academic community, the Chairman Committee of Vice Chancellors of all Nigerian universities, the Vice President, Association of African Universities, AAU, current member of ETF Board, current member of Teflon Board, and then current member of NYSC Council. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Professor Lydia and Salami, our Vice Chancellor. Madam Vice Chancellor is very much here with us today, but you'll be seeing in her one of our very dependable ally and assistant, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Administration of this university, a distinguished Professor of Medicine, Professor Mrs. Catherine Opowa, is standing in for the Vice Chancellor. We have with us today the leader of one of the very important aspects of the history of this university. When we talk of University of Benin, we talk of Ekenwa campus. The man is represented over it, a professor of pharmacognosis, Professor B.A. Ayede, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Ekenwa campus. The bossa is very much here represented by a very senior deputy bossa in the university's bossman, Dr. Dominic Eche, is standing in for the bossa. Please give him a round of applause very well. So that money can flow. The university is known for its publications, research, activities, and so on, and the custodian of our publications and research knowledge, the university librarian, Professor Luke Obasi, is also here. We have with us a very distinguished Professor of Medicine, immediate past Dean, School of Medicine, from our reputable College of Medical Sciences, the Provost, Professor Wilson Sagan. The Dean of Postgraduate Studies is being represented here by Dr. S.A. Aliu. The Dean of the The students call themselves 700,001. Maybe it's the one on top of that 700,000. The Dean of Student Affairs, Professor A.C. Quandary. Today, there will be a lot of things to follow, price and still very plenty RSVP. The man we are to hold responsible today if things don't flow very well, and I'm sure things will flow, definitely, is the Dean, Faculty of Law, Professor Omoregie. We have a very distinguished professor who is very friendly, very determined, and very fair. Faculty that I've interacted with at different times in my life. The Dean Faculty of Arts, Professor S.C. Yuka. We have with us too, representing the Dean Faculty of Agriculture, Dr. John Ebodian. Dr. E.D. Ondai is representing the Dean School of Dentistry. We also have another representative, this time for the Dean of Education, because we have some of our affiliates, and today is a very important day in their life in Lagos. Professor Omoregie, but he's being represented here today by Professor Regina Dana. Dr. E.T. Ahero is standing in for the Dean Faculty of Engineering. Dr. C.P. Ogu is standing in for the Dean Faculty of Environmental Sciences. And the man you cannot miss in the midst of this crowd because of his tallishness, the Dean Faculty of Life Sciences, Professor Jerry Orui. Professor Enofe is also the Dean Faculty of Management Sciences. The Dean Faculty of Pharmacy, Professor A. Opara, is also in the proceeding in the procession. Professor J.E. Osewenhai is the Dean Faculty of Physical Sciences. Of course, we have the Dean Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor D.A. Tonwe. Professor Agogo is the Director of Distance Learning Program of UNIBEN. Professor E.E. Ubiagwe is the Director Center for Entrepreneurship Development. Professor Hassan Ohena is the Director Center for Educational Technology. We have another very able person in the procession of the Vice Chancellor today, the Director of F1 Center of Excellence, Professor O.J. Abolaba. You may not find it easy to see him, but he's very much there. Professor Mrs. Ujiro Igudu is the Director Center for Sustainable Development Goal, FDG. Please give the woman some round of applause. That's part of the fallout from the Beijing conference. Professor Mrs. Ikoria is the Director of Central Research Laboratory of this university. She's there. Please give her a round of applause. Professor Tito Ayewi is the Director of our JUPEP program. Please give him a round of applause. I'll see for those who cannot see him. And of course, we have another distinguished professor of law, this time around in the Quality Assurance Directorate as a director, Professor Mrs. Ngozi Unuibe. Once upon a time, ex-that, the orator of this university, and currently the director of University Advancement Office, Professor Eddie Eragui. The time is always on the telly talking about one thing or the other. You have Dr. D. Quandary, the Director of the Institute of Child Health of this university, one of the directors in our Ekewa campus. IPAES, Dr. Edoba is also here very much in the business concession. You have Dr. Mrs. O.N. and here as the Acting Director of Student Guidance Counseling of this university. Leading the procession today is Monday, where is the Deputy Registrar of Senate Matters of this university. Please give every one of them a round of applause. You would have observed that the list is becoming endless. Yes, it's because of the personality of the inaugural lecturer today. But I'm not competent to speak about this very distinguished professor of law. It is therefore my singular honor and pleasure to call on the Acting Vice Chancellor to please present the inaugural lecturer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Please permit me to stand on the already established protocol. But I must not fail to acknowledge our Uniben students. Great Uniben students! Greatest Uniben students! Great! It is my pleasure. I welcome you all to this inaugural lecture, the 280th in the inaugural lecture series of the University of Benin. Our Vice Chancellor, I bring you very warm greetings from our Vice Chancellor, the amiable, indefatigable Professor Lilian Moitinya Salami. She sends you her warm regards. She's unavoidably absent due to the exigencies of her duties. But she sends there's an address from her. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this 280th inaugural lecture in the series of the University of Benin. Today's lecture is the 52nd to be delivered in my tenure as the Vice Chancellor of this university. 6th in the Faculty of Law, and 2nd from the Department of Private and Property Law. I'm pleased to inform you that the first semester examinations for the 2021-2022 session have been concluded. The lectures for 2nd semester of the session will commence on Tuesday, 13th June 2023. Freshers for the first semester of the 2023 session will be resuming on Sunday, 2nd July 2023. I once again thank all staff and students for their cooperation. I reassure everyone that management is working very hard to normalize the academic calendar that was disrupted by COVID-19 and industrial actions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now a pleasure to introduce our lecturer for today. He is Professor Edoba Bright Omoregie, SAN. The title of his lecture is Nigeria's Federal System in a Quandary, the Whys and Hows to Fix It. Professor Edoba Bright Omoregie, SAN, was born on the 15th of April, 1969, to the family of Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Irowa Omoregie of blessed memory in Ugo, a community in the model local government area of Edo State. He attended Agbado Model Primary School, Benin City, where he obtained his first full living certificate in 1980. He attended Edo Polo Grammar School, Benin City, where he obtained his West African School certificate in 1985. He gained admission into the University of Benin to study law, and he graduated with Bachelor of Law, LLB degree in 1991.
He attended the Nigerian Law School, Victoria Island, Lagos, from 1991 to 1992 to qualify as a barrister and solicitor. He did his mandatory one-year national youth service in Akwanga Local Government Council in Nasarawa State as the legal advisor in 1993. He joined the services of the University of Benin as an assistant lecturer in January 1998. He obtained the Master of Law (LLM) degree from the University of Benin in 1999 and a PhD in law in 2010. He rose through the ranks to the position of professor on 1st October 2015. His primary research focus is good governance. Professor Edoba has held several academic and administrative positions within and outside the university. For example, acting head of Department of Private and Property Law, 2006 to 2007, 2013 to 2015. Head, Department of Private and Property Law, 2016 to 2017. Member, University of Benin Scholarship and Awards Committee, 1999 to 2000. Member, University of Benin Staff School Management Board, 2007 to 2008. Secretary General, Academic Staff Union of Universities, University of Benin Branch, 2006 to 2008. Publicity Secretary, Nigerian Bar Association Benin City Branch, 1996 to 1997. Member, University of Benin Essential Services Committee, 2012 till date. Senate Representative, Central Examination Committee, 2013 to 2014. Hall Warden of 4, University of Benin Ubowo Campus, 2013 to 2016. Member, University of Benin Security Committee, 2015. Member, Procurement and Equipment Management Committee, University of Benin, 2015. Member, Think Tank Committee to develop a memorandum for the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Abuja, for presentation to the National Assembly on agitations to restructure Nigeria, August to November 2017. Member, National Universities Commission Accreditation / Resources Verification Panels. Director, Legislative Support Services, National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, National Assembly, Abuja, 2019 till date. Professor Omoregie has served in various editorial capacities at the National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies. These include Editor and Editor-in-Chief, National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies, Journal of Review, 2018 till date. Editor-in-Chief, National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies Bill Digest, 2019 till date. Editor, National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies, Compendium of Motions and Late Debates. He has also served as external examiner and assessor to several universities within and outside the country. Professor Omoregie was conferred with the prestigious honor, the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, SAN, in 2021. For his academic distinction in the legal profession. He has over 50 publications in local, national, and international journals. He has attended over 45 local and international conferences and has successfully supervised 5 PhD students. Professor Omoregie has a passion for reading profiles, listening to music and tourism. He's a Christian. He's married to Professor Mrs. Ehimema Shina Omoregie, and the union is blessed with 4 children. Ladies and gentlemen, his invite Professor Edoba Omoregie, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor of Comparative
Once again, let me thank my advisors for a very warm introduction. And I want to seek the permission of the Vice Chancellor to stand on the already established protocol. Before I go to the meat of my presentation, please also permit me to do some dedications. I'm going to be dedicating this presentation to first, my late mother, Mrs. Mariana Zoluwa of blessed memory. And also to my beloved wife and confidant, Professor Mrs. Erema Shina Omoregie. And most definitely to my beautiful daughters, Usayi Mese Yowa Omoregie, Saziwa Yowa Omoregie, Usaya Yowa Omoregie, and the baby of the house, Usasogie Yowa. Before I proceed, let me give a little background into the reason why I have decided to choose the topic of today. But of course, some preliminaries will be useful. I'm about 8 years late in making this presentation, because as we all know, inaugural lecture is supposed to inaugurate you into the professorial chair. But I want to thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor Mrs. Lilian Mwetia Salami, for finally giving me the approval to give this presentation. I'm very pleased to be counted in the company of the previous illustrious lecturers of inaugural lecture, starting with Professor John CNN, who delivered the first inaugural lecture of this university in February 1977. I'm also pleased to be counted in the company of the 5 previous lecturers from the Faculty of Law. Now, why did I choose to become a federalism researcher? The journey began when I was doing my master's degree, and it turned out that during the period, debates were on about our country's future, and most of the debates centered around constitutionalism, and in particular federalism. And then my interest kindled. I chose federalism over constitutionalism, or so to say, constitution making, because I felt that when you have made a constitution, so be it. But when you are talking of federalism, it's a continuing conversation. So I naturally gravitated towards federalism scholarship. And so I have chosen the topic for today's lecture: Nigeria's federal system in the Quandary, the why and how to fix it. Because of 4 major reasons. One, because it encapsulates the 25 years of focused study on the problem of Nigeria's federal system. And second, it's an attempt to illustrate why this country's future depends on federalism, and without more. And why we must remain federal, and in fact remain one as a country, and to avoid the consequences of not remaining one, because as you will discover, the consequences are far more there than breaking up. So I decided to title my presentation the way I've done, to capture all the essence of this presentation. Now, this is how I'm going to proceed with my talk. I'll start with introduction, and I will try to run through the conceptual framework. And that will take a very short while to do, because It's a very pedantic area, so I've run through it. Then I'll talk about the choice and structure of the federal system in Nigeria. That's will be number 3. And number 4, I'll talk about why Nigeria's federal system is in a quandary. Then, in my 5th conversation, I'll talk about why Nigeria's federal system needs to be fixed. And then number 6, I will also speak, and this one is the recommendation, how we should proceed to fix Nigeria's federal system. Then I'll talk about some acknowledgement of 7, and I'll conclude and summarize the recommendation. So let me start with number 1, which is introduction. Again, I will acknowledge my vice chancellor and thank you, and to say that the subject of federalism is very, very hard. And the very idea of federalism itself is very hard. In fact, it's very hard to practice. That's an acknowledgement that all federalism scholars, one of them is here, Professor Salulo, his work I respect to it. Federalism is hard because at all times the debate continues as to how to erect the system. In the US, as we speak, there's a perpetual debate between the domains of federal power and the domain of state power. Their own conversation has to do with the tussle between the liberals and the conservatives over welfare issues. To what extent should the federal government get involved in welfare matters? And to what extent should the states also be led to do its own, carry out its own activity? So that is the divide in the US. In Nigeria, the contention is between those who talk about restructuring or federal system reform and those who insist on retaining the status quo as it is. Now, federalism matters. It's part of all this conflict of interpretation of perception. It matters because, as we will discover in the text and perhaps if time permits here, federalism is appropriate for divided countries. Countries that have diversity in every sense, cultural, religious, and so forth. And so, you know, without federalism, such countries are not likely to thrive. And so it matters. I've referred to this in a number of my work. If you look at Omoregie 2008, Omoregie 2017, Omoregie 2018, Omoregie 2021, and 2022. I've discussed extensively why federalism matters. Now, the conversation of federalism is best understood as a talk between shared rule and self-rule. And I've spoken about that in my work in Omoregie 2008. For Daniel and Liza himself, who first used the expression self-rule and shared rule. Shared rule meaning the division of power between the federal government and the states. And self-rule meaning the autonomy that the states should have in their domain of power. So essentially that is the ideal of federalism. Now, in the Nigerian context, my research has had to interrogate what we have done with our federalism since 1954, when the system was established under the Litigation Constitution. So that is the crux of my presentation today. How have we fared as a federal nation from 1954 to date? Now, before I proceed to answer the question, I think it's necessary that we just run through some conceptual issues, because those issues will continue to dominate in the discussion. And then first is federalism. Now, I won't bother you. I'll tell you how I define federalism, because so many people have different perspectives about it. Talking as a lawyer, this is my definition of federalism. Federalism, according to Omoregie 2000, 2010, 2013, federalism is a form of government which institutionalizes vertical distribution of power to demarcate competence of the federal government and the state government within the framework of a written, supreme, and rigid constitution. So whatever I'm going to talk today is going to go around all these description of federalism. Now, federalism can be distinguished from the federal system, as well as distinguished from federal principle, and of course distinguished from the federation. And from the constitutionalization, you discover that federalism is just the basic theoretical framework of the old talk while the federal system is the practice of federalism, and the federal principle is the, so to say, the ingredients which you have to eat federalism, so to say. So if you don't have the ingredients in place, you know what that means, that the soup will not be sweet. So if you don't have basic principles, in the subject, of course, whatever you are talking about will now become like almost an abstract and undigested issue. Now, a lot of countries have called themselves federation. They may not necessarily be practicing federalism. Nigeria is one of them. We do practice federalism in certain respects, I will discover, talk about later. But there are some things that are absent, and they touch on the federal principle, and I'll discuss that later. But you will be surprised that a country like the United States doesn't even describe itself as a federation. Not a single word called federal or federation is mentioned in the American Constitution, but it is the archetypal federal system known to know, and it's the model really of all federations. So Nigeria is a federation, at least has called itself one, by virtue of Section 2 and 3 of the Constitution. But what we have discovered over the years, and I've reflected in my work, is that there are many features of the unitary system in the Nigerian federal system, or Nigerian federalism, as some people want to describe it, which makes it not truly satisfactory, and why the credentials of our federal system continue to be contested. You find them there in my work. Now, the totality of the issue, therefore, is you have to ask yourself, what are the things, what are the irreducible minimum ingredients for this whole idea of federalism, without which you can not say that you are truly a federation, or even practicing the federal system, or indeed practicing federalism. Now, there are 6 basic ingredients, and they are first, the Supreme Constitution, which institutes duality of sovereignty between the federal government and the states. There must be mutual non-interference, or what I describe as intergovernmental immunity. There must be the equality of states. There must be appropriate number of states. This is my coinage, appropriate number. And then there must be vertical distribution of power. And finally, there must be an arbitral body. An arbitral body doesn't have to be even a court. It can be parliament, like it happened in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, there's what they call the House of Federation. It is that body that acts like the Supreme Court, in terms whenever there is a dispute over the domain of power between the states and the federal government in that country. In Switzerland, they resolve their federal dispute by referendum. So it doesn't have to be a court, but most federations, resolve their disputes through the court. Now, I'll interrogate this principle too, the principle of subsidiarity, principle of decentralization, principle of proportionality, and the principle of solidarity. These principles are intrinsic, describe them as intrinsic to the idea of federalism, without which you cannot claim to be federal. If you are talking of power sharing, for instance, you must factor in the principle of subsidiarity. If you want to exercise power, you must factor in the principle of decentralization. If you want to be effective in the exercise of power, you must factor in the principle of proportionality. And then if you want to carry everybody along in the federal union, you must factor in the principle of solidarity. And so we'll talk about that when we proceed through our discussion. So I'll go to number 3, and that is the choice and structure of the federal system in Nigeria. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Nigeria has declared itself a federation. And that is, if you look at Section 2.1 of the Constitution, you see that provision affirms the fact that first we are a sovereign nation, and second that we are a federation. And then Section 3 talks about the nature of vertical structure that we have, which is the national government and then sub-national government. Of course, the states are mentioned there. The local government are also mentioned there. But that's a misnomer in the sense that typically, when you are talking of federalism, which is indeed a question of agreement, the local government are not parties to the federal agreement. But in our own case, we mentioned local government in the Constitution. We even went to the extent, very verbose, if you ask me, to list out 77 and 74 local government there. Which is unique. Most federations don't even bother. Now, in terms of history, that's why I mentioned Professor Salul's work. Nigeria's federal system was not imposed. And historically, there were some, engagements that led to our ultimately becoming federal. But if you want to trace the history even further back, you discover that all of us in this area, about 960 70,000 square kilometer area that we are in, we've all interacted at one point or the other in our history. Except those of our friends or compatriots from the Asa Fulani, or particularly the Fulani area, who, because of their migrant nature, have come to join us perhaps about 3 or 4 centuries ago. Essentially all of us here are indigenous to this particular area. So we've had some history of interaction over the years. So for those of us who research this here, we will say that we are tailor-made because we're not like persons who were brought in here, but we've always been here. Of course, we all know the interaction between the Edobas and the Benin, and so on and so forth. So that already set the pace for our federal union. Now, for that, we are a large population. We know that 208 million people, the most recent estimate of 2003. And then we have diverse peoples. We have about 300 ethnic nationalities. We have over 500 linguistic languages. So that makes us truly a candidate for federalism. Now, but there are things that were done that pushed us towards the very adoption of federalism eventually. And I start by listing the General Act of the Benin Conference on West Africa, what they call the Partition of Africa, Benin Conference of 1885. That is the first act because it was there that Nigeria was, so to say, given to the British to administer. So that's where we began. Then we went on the amalgamation of 1914, we know that. Then in 1939, something significant happened. Benin Bodilon, who was the administrative governor general then, created 3 provinces for the first time. Province of West, East, and North of Nigeria. But it was not in a constitutional document. So by 1946 rather, Sir Otto Richard's constitution had this administrative division embedded in the constitution. And then there was further conversation as to the way forward for Nigeria. And that conversation continued throughout the country. It was actually a commissioned conversation in all the towns and cities from about 1949, culminating in the Benin Conference of 1950. And the issue of federalism came up there. And then the agreements reached there were put in the 1951 constitution, what historians will refer to as the Macpherson Constitution. Then in 1954, of course, the conversation continued. We were dissatisfied with the Macpherson Constitution because it did not fully reflect the conclusion reached at Ibadan 1950. So ultimately there were conferences here in Lagos and then of course in London, which culminated in the 1954 Constitution, what many refer to as the Elizabeth Constitution. Now, that Constitution encapsulates or encapsulated all what the indigenous leaders agreed as the way forward for our country, assuming we eventually become independent as our federal template. And all of what you have left in that Constitution were adopted substantially and put in the 1960 and 1963 Constitution. Now, I want to say this because this is significant to our discussion. The basic aspect of the 1960 and 63 Constitution, which interests me, which is relevant for our conversation, is the distribution of power in those 2 constitutional documents. There, you have the federal government was given 45 items, please note, 45 items of power, while the regions were given 29 items of power together with the federal government in the concurrent list. But as you will discover, those agreements were eroded in time. That's where we are now, so to say. Which is that subsequently, the federal government became the octopus like this, and the states became the Lilliputians that they are. So, the difference or the problem began in 1966. This is a piece of history, but it's relevant history. Because you have to ask yourself, where did we begin to deviate? And how do we begin to remedy our deviation? So, the problem began in 1966, January 17th. The coup occurred January 15th, but Decree number 1 of January 17th, 1966 declared that the federal military government shall have power to make law in anything, on any subject. Even over and above the 45 items that were contained in the 1960 and 63 Constitution, and even the 29 items that they had powers to exercise. So, usually, what happens when you are demarcating power, that there's some residue of power, not given to the federal government, and not put those residual powers were now taken over by the federal government. So now Ironsi did not just stop there. He went and passed Decree number 24 of May 1906 to abolish federalism altogether. He wanted to restore it, but he didn't restore the powers that were agreed upon under the 1960 and 63. Now this history is relevant because we need to understand why we got it wrong. So I go to number 4. Now, in this section, I'm just going to interrogate why Nigeria's federal system is important. Notice that the substratum of my title says why are we in support the equality and how we can remedy the jam we put ourselves. Now, I will start by saying, and you can find that in Omoregie 2016, Omoregie 2021, that, and this is my, from my research, that basically Nigeria's federal system satisfies 4 of the basic ingredients of federalism. The first one is that we have a supreme constitution. Section 1 of our constitution is supreme. So that satisfies the ingredient of federalism. Our constitution is rigid. If you look at section 9 of the constitution, you can't just wake up and begin to propose constitutional amendments. So you have to go through a very, what I describe as supermajority threshold before you can amend or alter the constitution. And the reason is because, all federal scholars know that if you have to make the constitution easy to amend, then there will be crisis because minorities will be oppressed. So that satisfies the idea of federalism. Now, we also have been able to satisfy the idea of appropriate number of states. Now, this one is really contentious. There are some people who are insisting that we need to have more states. Our friends from the East say they must have one additional state. And you can't blame them because already states are now the basis for power, for distribution of resources. So they desire that you have additional states in the hope that they will have more allocation of resources. But in terms of basic principle, our federal system satisfies the issue of appropriate number because the number should be not less than 9 as we have in Ethiopia and not more than 50 as we have in the US. So to that extent, as we have 36, we have been able to satisfy the idea of appropriate number of states. Then the quality of states, our states are equal. We don't have one state subordinate to the other. Then of course we have an arbitral body, which is the Supreme Court. Now, instead of this fact that we have satisfied the 4 ingredients, we have deficient in 2 and very fundamental issues. And the first one is the problem of power sharing, distribution of powers. You see, our federal system has failed woefully in saying that we just allocated power without principle. And I'll talk about that later. Secondly, our states are subordinate in virtually everything, not just in terms of distribution of power, in virtually everything when we are talking of intergovernmental relations. They don't even have freedom of action. In fact, it has got to the point where all of us here, citizens of Nigeria, we have more belief or more thought that federal governments is the finisher of effect than even the states. Whereas the idea of federalism suggests that, and that is what the subsidiarity principle talks about, that anything that concerns you on a daily basis, the states must be the first intervener. The closest community to you must be an intervener. The Catholic Church will tell you about the social order. It is the first, it is you that you solve your problem first before the national government. And so we have failed in these 2 fundamental respects. And I've had this conversation for many years, but I'll refer you to Omoregie 2021, some of my most recent works. Now, what I've done in the course of my research is to aggregate these 2 cross-cutting problems. And they dominate virtually all the discussion I've had over the years concerning federalism. I'll take the first one, and that is the lack of autonomy in access to significant tax sources. We all know that federal government has power over all taxes. It's wrong. What happens elsewhere is that the federal government should have the general power of taxation, while the state should have specific power of taxation. The federal government will always remain the big boy because it can tax all over 36 states, while the state can tax only within their immediate domain. So we have failed there. The second problem is the lack of autonomy in the horizontal management of government by the states. They can't organize their judiciary, for instance. All judicial appointments have to be decided in Abuja. It wasn't so before. Even in 1979, it was not so. If you look at the 1979 Constitution, you will discover that you have two bodies, the Federal Judicial Service Commission and the State Judicial Service Commission. These two bodies were the ones that determine, who becomes appointed as the federal judge at the federal level, the Federal Judicial Service Commission. And the State Judicial Service Commission determine who becomes the judge at the state level. But that is not what we have done. We have now the NJC, so everybody has to go to Abuja to get appointment as a judge. Now, we have the lack of subnational autonomy in policing. We discussed that over and over again, meaning that we need to have some kind of decentralization of the police. We have a problem of unbalanced power, which myself and Omoregie first wrote on in 2006, and we have had that conversation for many, many years. In Omoregie 2015, up to 2021. Now, this principle of this problem of distribution of power have isolated them as deficiencies of subsidiarity and deficiencies of proportionality. In the main book, you will find what I have to say here. But bottom line is that our power sharing is on principle, and we need to restore back, sharing of power on the basis of subsidiarity and proportionality. Now, there is also the challenge of incoherent principle of solidarity. We have the federation account. That account is supposed to be the solidarity weapon to bring all of us together. Well, you all know that it's the cause of a lot of tension, because some people feel that they are contributing more and they are getting less. Now, why do we need to fix our federal system? I just summarize the reason in this way: to improve the living standard of Nigerians. All this talk we are having, without improvement in our living standards, there will continue to be tension, there will continue to be anger. And the reason I've said is poor distribution of powers. The federal government has taken too much and cannot deliver. Then there is to prevent conflicts and to stabilize the country. You can see that over the years, particularly in the past 8 years, you have had conflicts, killings, problem between herders and farmers, and so on and so forth. So you have this terrible phenomenon of kidnapping that has become a very challenge, a big challenge to all of us. That is the problem of lack of internal security. And the federal government alone borders about internal security, which is wrong. It should go by the principle of subsidiarity. Now, the reason why we must, third reason, which is that we must avoid violent disintegration. Because we are going there. What we are seeing now, there are signs of possible disintegration. It's happening in Yugoslavia. They ignored it. It's happening in Ethiopia. Of course, we know what's happening in Yemen. So we need to fix our federal system to avoid violent disintegration. People are angry, and they don't even, sometimes they don't, when the problem becomes so unmanageable, there will be disintegration. Today, Yugoslavia has 6 countries. And you know what happened? Millions of people died, and we must avoid that. Now, how do we fix our federal system? I have 8 prescriptions, and they are all reflected in my research over the past 25 years. The first one is that we should place more premium on federalism expertise. I've been at the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies for about 6 years. And I can tell you that even as you have been there, you can, as Omoregie once said, you can only advise. And they can ignore you. So, and the reason why they ignore you, because they don't place premium on expertise, as they should. Somebody was having a conversation with me yesterday. The police act of 2020, they didn't even want us to look at it when it became law. It was an executive act. They wanted to introduce what they call democratic policing, but they didn't know how to go about it. But they didn't use the experts. Now you have a confusion, that it's the Nigerian police tenure is 4 years. In another part of the act, you have it stated there that you have to be between 60, if you have 60 years, or 35 years of service, you can convert. So you can see confusion, and it's because there's not sufficient, attention paid to the advice of experts. Then I've suggested that we should have some constitutional alterations. I've listed sections of the Constitution that have to be altered, and all those constitutional provisions relate to power sharing. They relate to the subsidiarity issue I mentioned, relate to solidarity issues. I also advise, and this is one of my proudest contributions to federalism scholarship in Nigeria, which is that it is not all the time that we go about trying to alter the constitution. You can also use policy to drive the process. And what does that mean? The federal government can retain whatever power you want to retain. But if you have the political will and you understand the dynamics, the problems of altering the constitution, then you can donate the power, to the states. And I hope the president will come and will know that you don't have to always go, to beg the National Assembly or fight anybody. You can retain the power, but by policy, you can drive it down to the states. The Americans are doing that. If I see Nixon, they'll be doing that. Now, judicial review. I suggested that the Supreme Court should be a lot more rigorous in its judicial review. What you find that the Supreme Court becomes very shy. Sometimes when he sees that the matter happens to be delicate, it declines the jurisdiction. Happily, he didn't do that in the Naira redesign case. That was a dispute between the federal government and the states. And you see the outcome of that decision. The court decided to be bold for the first time in a long time. I also said, in my works that, political parties, they all pledge to enhance our federal system, believe in true federalism and rest of it. But in the actual sense of the word, to what extent are they being faithful to these pledges? In my conversation, I have also said that the political parties ought to be able to mainstream federalism in all their activities and inculcating their members. And I tell you why they are not able to do that today. Because they do not have any institution really dedicated to the study of federalism in their midst and propagation of it. Now, the Germans have done so. The Americans have done so. You see, they have this National Democratic Institute all over the world. You have this Republican Institute all over the world. Those two institutions, they propagate the two major political party philosophy in America. Then you have heard of the Konrad Adenauer Stifel. That body is a German body, which is also dedicated to propagating the political philosophy of the German Christian Democratic Party. So, political parties in Nigeria should be able to have think tank institutions to drive home their pledge to sustain the federal system of our country. And then I suggested, again, this is also noted, that we should have a dedicated institution which should be given to research, evidence-based research on federalism. You'll be surprised that a country that calls itself the Federal Republic of Nigeria does not have a dedicated research institute focused on federalism research. None at all. And I've isolated about 30 such institutions in federal countries of the world. Even Ethiopia here, that began its federalism in 1995, has a dedicated institute for federalism. So we should have one. And I tell you, Madam Vice Chancellor, that we have something in motion in that regard, and it may be domiciled in the University of Benin. I also suggested in the course of my work, Omoregie 2021, that civil society bodies that are usually very supposed to be independent should dedicate more time to the study and to the propagation and the advocacy on federalism. They don't do that now. And it's not robustly enough. And I've suggested that they should be able to do that. And then I've suggested, finally, that we should have more infusion of federalism in the civic education of our country. And I see the reason why it's so important, and I can tell you that virtually all federations have that from primary school, from grade up. They begin to teach them who they are. Somehow the military said we should not talk about it. Don't talk about your division. Don't remind yourself about that you are outside go Yoruba Benin and all that. That is how problems start. That was what Tito did for many years in Yugoslavia. Don't talk about your division. And what was the outcome? There's no more Yugoslavia. So we should have civic education and federalism mainstreamed. For us in the legal academy, we only talk about federalism as just one topic in constitutional law, and that is wrong. We must have federalism as a standalone subject. If we can have commercial law taught as a standalone subject, which is a subtract of contract, I don't see why we cannot study federalism as a standalone subject. And so that is my Madam Vice Chancellor, let me say that federalism is hard once again, but I've been able to put some things together which I believe will be able to drive us in the direction of fixing the problem. Before I recap, let me make some acknowledgements. I have so many questions to acknowledge, but I will start with God Almighty, which is the reason why we are even alive. God has been faithful to me in many respects. As a boy, I lost my father, but I've kept going on, and I know that has always been ultimately the grace of God. So I thank God Almighty. I thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor Lilian Mwetian Salami, for the grace. Looking around the campus, you can see that there's a major difference. You don't need to be told. I want to thank all my teachers. There are many here. Professor Segwa taught me administrative law, later the master's class, later is for my work and doctoral thesis. I thank Professor Dubois up there. In fact, he made the road smoother for me. He had a difficult ride, but when he came to my turn, he made the road smoother. Not by any means, but I reminded him what to do. If the supervisor is not willing to direct you, you're going to spend 10 years doing your PhD. So I thank you for making the road smoother for me. I thank my primary school teacher, I will never forget him. Mr. Oluyemi. He taught me how to be neat. And in fact, he know the idea of public affairs in me. And I will never forget it. Many years now, over 40 years, he taught me those two things. And every time when I went out public, I have to ask myself whether my fingers are clean and all that. Almost as if I'm still have to report to Mr. Oluyemi. And then there was Mr. Ezekadi, chief, actually, for long show Ezekadi. I'm told he's still alive. When somebody mentioned it a few days ago, attending Old Boys election, they don't follow the mosque. And I was asking my former SP. He said, no, Mr. Chief Secretary is still alive. So I'm going to look for him. He made me the bell ringer when I was in class 2 in secondary school. And how did he do that? He noticed that I was always the first to come to school. I was a day school, but we didn't have boarding school anymore. Remember 1980-81, they had problems, and so they shut down the boarding school system there. So I would come here about 7 a.m. in the morning, and he would be outside there, comb his hair, and you will see me, I'll greet him, I'll pass. One day, he asked me to come up, and he asked me some questions. I was fidgeting, as you would expect. I thought I had done something bad. So he now said, what's your name? I put down my name, what class? I told him. Then that day, he came to the assembly hall and called my name out. I almost fainted. So he now said that this young man is going to be the bell ringer for the school. And everybody started clapping. So I was wondering. So from there, I told myself I would not do anything bad to disappoint this man. So I thank my teachers. Of course, I thank my colleagues in the Faculty of Law. They've been wonderful, all of them, without exception. Even those who have passed away, they taught me the way. There's a Benin saying that a man who's chasing you about is the one that's showing you the way. So I thank God for everybody. I have no bitterness against anybody. On the contrary, I love everybody. Because I have also learned a lot of lessons that I'm not perfect myself. I've hurt many people and I've asked for forgiveness from them. Then my colleagues are here. Some of them, they are here now. The DG couldn't be here. Because tomorrow is going to be giving a lecture at the Lorry, so he sent the delegation. Dr. Abdullah led them. And we have my colleagues in the Department of Legislative Support Services here. So I thank you for all your cooperation for over the years. Then I thank my friends. There are so many of them. I can't, His Excellency is here in person. His Excellency Dr. Pius Odugu is here. And through him, I connect with every other person, my friends here. I can't thank my family enough. My wife, here, I met her, I was just 23 and she was 21. Who believe it? We were all the toppers at Quandary, a tiny village in their part of the now Nasarawa State. And we told ourselves that we are going to make it big. We are going to go to school more. And so we are here now. So I thank you. I thank all my children. They are very dutiful. The only one that is not here, and that is Usaina. She's trying to learn more herself. So the other ones are here, and I am very grateful that you have remained very patient with me and enjoying all my absentees on the home, studying and of course being Abuja in the past 5 to 6 years. So I thank everybody. I thank my family member. My senior brother is here, Henry Omoregie. I told many people, he is the one that made me to study law. You know, I said it when I was conferred the senior advocate of Nigeria. I'm saying it here again. So I thank you, sir, for the guidance and the mentorship. So I'll conclude by saying that our federal system must grow. And the only way we can grow it is by dealing with those two deficiencies. That is the challenge of unbalanced distribution of powers, and of course the challenge of subsuming the states, you know, as if they are Lilliputians under the federal government. If we are able to free the states, then we are going to make progress. And I said that those 8, you know, ways by which you can do that. So I just conclude by saying that my research convinces me that if pursued with vigor, these cross-cutting solutions hold the key to making Nigeria's federal system a catalyst for improved standard of living for citizens, national development, conflict prevention, and stability. Thank you so much.
Please put your hands together again. Thank you, Prof. Now, as he was concluding, Mr. Owie, please sit down, please. Mr. Owie said, we have not acknowledged his wife well. I said, should he put his wife on his head? Thank you very much, sir. I'm sure she's very happy. Thank you, Prof. And so we now respectfully invite the acting Vice Chancellor to recap the lecture.
Ladies and gentlemen, you must agree with me that he has actually done justice to this lecture. And in this day and age of Nigeria and this system, we really need this kind of lecture. He has explained to us the meaning of federalism and all its the whys and hows to fix it. I know you, so there's a synopsis, but it's just going to be very short because he's been so explicit and he's told us everything we need to know. The lecture, well, before I give the synopsis, please, ladies and gentlemen, please can we stand up once again to just thank, to welcome and clap for our lecturer. The lecturer praises the challenges of the Nigerian federal system from a normative perspective. It provides justification for the sustenance of the system and premised it on the need to guarantee better living standards for people under an atmosphere of peace and national stability. The lecture discusses the theoretical underpinnings of the federal system and notes that Nigeria may indeed be a typical federation, but that its federal system suffers from the deficits of basic federalism principles of decentralization, subsidiarity, proportionality, and solidarity. The lecture explains why Nigeria chose to be a federation instead of confederation or to be unitary, and justifies the choice based on the country's pre-colonial history of interaction between its hugely diverse population of over 200 million people spread across over 300 ethnic nationalities, speaking over 500 different languages, and its large territorial size. The lecture blames military rule for fostering centralization of powers and resources on the country. It identifies cross-cutting design flaws in the 1999 Constitution as being responsible for Nigeria's federal system for it to be a one. The lecturer provides recommendations to fix Nigerian federal system. He told us all the recommendations, so just a few. They include, among others, prioritizing federalism, expertise in reform efforts. And most importantly, well, to me it's quite important that it will be included, the inclusion of federalism and the federal system in Nigeria as a standalone subject of study from the elementary, secondary to tertiary education system, and most especially in the legal education curriculum. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sure that was just a small synopsis, but I'm sure you gained a lot from this. So, pardon me, but please, can we just do a final clap for our lecture? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please don't go away, Acting VC, as we invite the immediate family members of the lecturer to come up stage for the decoration of the lecturer. As we do that, we crave the indulgence of the Acting Vice Chancellor to recognize the following. We welcome very specially the darling, the heartbeats, the very cerebral, the very beautiful, the darling wife of the lecturer, Professor Mrs. Einema Shina Omoregie. Welcome you, ma'am. Welcome Osazuwa Irowa Omoregie, the daughter, Osayame and Osasogie, the daughters also. We welcome you. We welcome His Excellency Dr. Pius Ogugu, former Deputy Governor of Edo State. Please join me also to welcome Dr. Roland Otaru, SAN. Please applaud them as we call their names. We welcome the husband of the Acting Vice Chancellor, Dr. Omoregie Former. If I do not make that recognition, I don't think she will forgive me. So, Dr. Former, sir, we welcome you very specially. Please put your hands together. Thank you. Welcome Major General Charles Omoregie, former JTF Commander in the Niger Delta. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Professor L.A. Asegwa, SAN. We welcome Dr. Samson Osage, former Minority Whip of the House of Representatives. Welcome you, sir. Join me also to applaud Honorable Razak Bello Osage, former member House of Representatives. We welcome you, sir. Welcome Right Honorable Bright Omohojo, former Speaker, Edo State House of Assembly, and former Commissioner of Finance, Edo State. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Paul Nohore, representing Senator Matthew Urogide. We welcome you. We welcome Anibal Waifo, President, African Bar Association. We also welcome Henry O. Omoregie, Esquire, President, Benin Club, and other members of Benin Club. We welcome Prince Tony Omoregie. Welcome, sir. Please put your hands together as we also welcome Sir Moses Agoko. Welcome, sir. We welcome Honorable Abarese Idubo, former President of Benin Club. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Roland Otaru, SAN. We welcome you, sir. Again. We welcome Pastor and Professor Mrs. Osage Izeyamu. We welcome you especially. We welcome Apex Ultimate Club members. We welcome Honorable Patrick Okundia, former Commissioner for Health, Edo State. We welcome you especially. Please put your hands together also as we welcome Dr. Isaac Omoregie, former CMD, Stella Obasanjo Hospital, Benin City. We welcome Professor Lawrence Omo Aoja, former President, former Provost, College of Medical Sciences, Delsi. We welcome Professor Godspar Ekwobase. We welcome all past presidents of the Benin Club and management committee members. We welcome our darling sister and former registrar of our university, Mrs. Otasowie Oshodi. We welcome you. We welcome Professor John Ogene, former Deputy Vice Chancellor at K1 Campus. We welcome Professor Musa Erafona. We welcome you, sir. We also welcome Professor Violet Aikokairo, former and first female Dean of Law, University of Benin. We welcome Professor Vincent Iyawe, former Provost, College of Medical Sciences. In the Stars College House, we welcome Professor Mrs. Kadiri. Welcome, ma. We welcome Professor Juku Ogba, Director of Public-Private Partnership, UNIBEN. We welcome Professor Nat Inegbejon, former Dean of Law. We welcome Professor Richard Idubo, another former Dean of Law. We welcome Professor Emmanuel Okujo, former Rector, Delta Polytechnic Ogara. We welcome Dr. Abu Abdul, former classmate of the lecturer from the UK. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Professor Mrs. Eki Ogre, Chairman, University Admission Board. We welcome Professor Bamidele Sani. We welcome Professor M.I. Ebomoyi, member of the University Government Council. We welcome Dr. Stephen Obeki, Acting Director, Alumni Relations. We welcome my very darling brother, Reverend Dr. Obiebo. Welcome, Uncle. We welcome Dr. Engineer Osa Obiadolo, Chairman, Bedrock Foundation, Lagos. And the last but certainly not the least, Professor Benson Osadola. Welcome, sir. And so, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that's how we conclude the 280th inaugural lecture series of the great University of Benin. May I now respectfully invite the audience to rise as we take the UNIBEN anthem, followed by the second stanza of the national anthem. Recognize the presence of the University Orator, Professor Mike Omoregie.